And welcome back to KPRC 2 Plus here at 7:30. You're watching our 7 a.m. newscast on our live stream.
Yes, we got a lot planned for this half hour. First up, a serious topic that we're talking about, and that's the New York City subway shootings that happened yesterday. 10 people were shot on a subway during the morning rush hour. None of the injuries, the shooting injuries, are considered to be life-threatening.
Which is such a miracle. Police say the suspect was wearing a gas mask and threw 2 smoke canisters before he opened fire on that moving train. They're searching for a person of interest at this point, but so far no one is in custody connected to the shootings. We do want to talk more about this attack and the impact with Mental Health America of Greater Houston. Alejandra Posada is Chief Operating Officer of that organization. Alejandra, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So an expert in behavioral health care, the first question we have for you, Alejandra, is talking about secondhand trauma and how news events like this impact a person. You know, like what's normal to feel, what's not normal to feel when we watch stuff like this unfold.
Absolutely, thank you. Well, first, for those who may not be familiar with the term, secondary trauma is simply a term to describe the indirect experience or exposure to traumatic events. So rather than somebody who has been part of or witnessed a violent or traumatic event in person, this may be somebody who hears about it from someone they know or sees that in the media. And it's very normal to be impacted by what we hear, and how these events affect each individuals really varies from person to person. The experience of trauma is a very individual event or personal event, varies from person to person, whether that's firsthand trauma or secondary trauma. But so it's certainly normal to have a reaction. And I hate to say that any kind of reaction is not normal, because again, that whole breadth of reactions is normal. But at the point where one can't get it out of one's mind, it's affecting one's day-to-day life. It's impacting, one's family life, one's work, one's sleep, physical symptoms perhaps, or constant anxiety or worry. That's a point at which someone may say, okay, let's look at what I can do to address this, either through some self care strategies or through seeking out some professional help.
Sure.
Yeah, and Alejandra, these things unfortunately just becoming more and more common. Do you find that as a society we're becoming more desensitized? And if so, what are the possible long-term impacts here?
Absolutely. We do see some desensitization, and again, very much varies, from person to person. We just respond differently, and there's no, wrong or right about it. It's just the way that that we're wired, so to speak. But when you see desensitization, very often it's an adaptive mechanism, and in order to preserve normal functioning, somebody has to sort of create that unconsciously create that barrier of desensitization. And so short term, that can be, as I said, adaptive. But longer term, if someone's experiencing that, but they're not feeling any emotion when they hear about traumatic events, that they're feeling apathy, not experiencing empathy. Again, that's something where they may want to look at how can I address that, because long term that can impact a person's ability to feel empathy, and ultimately, particularly when we're seeing young people who are adolescents who are experiencing this, could ultimately lead to greater violence, less ability to feel that empathy and compassion for others, which obviously can have an impact on society.
A long road for these victims who were traumatized yesterday. We're thankful that no one was killed, and the search for that gunman continues. Alejandra Posada, Chief Operating Officer with Mental Health America of Greater Houston. We certainly appreciate your time and your insight this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.